I'm Allison Field-Juma. I'm the executive director of OARS. It's the watershed organization for the Sudbury, Assabet, and Concord Rivers. We are the project manager for the Talbot Mills Dam removal. OARS was founded in 1986. We're a nonprofit organization. One of the things we do is we produce a river map. We do river cleanups every year. Our goal is to, what we say is restore the health of the river. And the rivers have been used for industry, for carrying waste, many, many different uses. And they have suffered from that and carry a load of water pollution from many sources, and we've worked very hard to reduce that pollution. We want to be sure that what we do actually has a real, tangible effect, real, tangible improvement for the rivers. And so that's why we do restoration projects, where we are seeing where a specific action can make a durable, permanent improvement in the conditions of the river for the wildlife, and also possibly for recreation, certainly for public safety, and for water supply, which is a critical, obviously we're very concerned about the water cycle. So we're very interested in water supply, maintaining water, all the different kinds of uses of water in our communities. We've worked over the past 15 years on restoring the continuity of rivers. Some of that has involved working towards dam removal. It has been lots of other different kinds of projects. With that, a little bit of background about our organization. Slide is up. I'm Allison Field-Juma. Eric Hutchins from NOAA is here, who works from the ocean side. Jill Griffiths from Gomez and Sullivan Engineers, who is the contractor to design this project, and she's been working on this project for many, many years and has made several presentations over the years to the town. Bob Martin is the owner of the dam, and Ben Gahagan from the Massachusetts Division of Marine Fisheries is, we believe, also, there he is, and Joe Gould from the Massachusetts Division of Ecological Restoration. So that's sort of our who's here tonight. And then I think the next slide shows who the project partners are. I'm not going to bore you with it all, but there's community partners, there's agencies at really at all levels of government.
Hi, my name is Bob Martin, and I'm the designated partner that owns the Talbot Dam. I'd like to thank the planning board to allow our team's presentation tonight to discuss the removal of the Talbot Dam and why it's important to me personally. You may ask the question, why do I want to remove the dam? And the answer is very simple. Number one, the dam does not serve any useful purpose as it did in the early days in the 1900s when the Talbot Mills were using it for hydropower. Number two, I do not want my legacy to have the dam ownership and associated liabilities and costs of being a dam owner, leaving the concern to my grandchildren. And number three, I live in Florida in the winter, in Cape Cod in the summer, and I really enjoy fishing. The opportunity for our team to create a beautiful setting at the dam site, complemented with having migratory fish populating the Atlantic as far south as the Chesapeake Bay, is a very compelling reason to work with our team versus gifting the dam to the Middlesex Museum or the town of Billerica. It is for these reasons that I hope that you will support our mission. Thank you.
I'm just going to give a little bit of background about the project, some of the goals and some of the studies that have been conducted to date, and what the conceptual design looks like. I'm going to kind of skim over it just so we don't keep people here too long, but I'm happy to go back and go through more technical details if you have questions. So there's a number of project goals that have been identified for this project. As Bob mentioned, first and foremost for him is decommissioning the aging infrastructure and removing that ongoing liability and maintenance concern. The project also aims to reduce flood hazards both upstream and downstream of the project, and in that way improving climate resilience. Also, obviously, a big goal is to restore fish passage for migratory fish that run up from the oceans. to spawn. And then lastly, the project will also have huge benefits for water quality, aquatic habitat, and natural river processes. So those are the goals. As Allison mentioned, we've been working on this project for a number of years. I've been working on it since about 2014 when we did a feasibility study to look at various alternatives to restore fish passage. Then we did a targeted study in 2021 looking specifically at some of the town's concerns that had been identified by the DPW, most prominently the upstream water intake, which I'll describe in a moment. And then in 2022, we did a conceptual design for the project, and we're currently working on preliminary design and permitting. As I mentioned, we did a feasibility study that included an alternatives analysis. We looked at a few alternatives, including no action, but that would involve repairing and ongoing maintenance for the dam, building a fish ladder at the dam, or dam removal. And ultimately, dam removal was selected as the preferred alternative due to it had the most potential benefits and not a lot of significant impacts. This is just an overview aerial image of the dam site. You can see the dam, I don't know, can you see cursors on that screen? Yes, okay. The dam spillway is here. It's about 130 feet long, roughly 10 feet high. This is referred to as the mill pond. It's what's called an impoundment. Upstream of a dam is the water impounded by the dam or raised artificially higher and affected hydraulically by the dam. And then we've got the Faulkner Street Bridge immediately downstream and the mill buildings. As I mentioned, this talks a little bit about the impoundment or the water impounded upstream of the dam. So down here is the dam. Water is flowing from the bottom to the top of the page and continues this way. The area outlined in green is referred to as the mill pond. That's kind of the bigger, wider area that you can see immediately from the dam. And then further upstream, it becomes more river-shaped, but it is still influenced by the dam. Up here is the Pollard Street Bridge, and this area outlined in green is what's referred to as the Fordway Bar. It's a natural feature that is on the river bottom. It's built of rock and harder material that has been there for hundreds of years, thousands of years over time, and has not eroded, so it's like a natural high point, and that will come into play later. I'll go through that more. Throughout the years, we've collected various topography or bathymetry data within the channel. So that's what's reflected here in this kind of terrain map, and you can see that the Fordway Bar is higher. It's this brown color, which is, you know, the highest of all the wetted areas here. So yeah, the Fordway Bar that I mentioned is right down in this corner here, outlined in green. This is a historical map showing the same thing, the dam, the impoundment, and the Fordway Bar. It's been studied for hundreds of years. In the 1800s, they did surveys of the river, which is what this map was produced from, and they took cross-sections at various, all these black lines are cross-sections, and here's one at the Fordway Bar. So the removal and the fate of the Talbot Mills Dam has been well studied for hundreds of years. So we've also done hydraulic modeling, which is a model that looks at water levels of the river, depending on different conditions. So you can do it for the current conditions, and then if you take out the dam, what would that look like? So that's what this attempts to show here. Along the bottom in brown is the channel bottom surface, and the blue is water. The existing, and then here is that Fordway Bar feature that I mentioned, this rock feature that is a natural high point. You can see it's the highest point continuing upstream, and then the Talbot Mills Dam is down here. Flow goes this way, and as I mentioned, channel bottom, Fordway Bar, and the existing water level is at this level at the spillway of the dam. That's what's keeping it higher. And then if the dam were to be removed, it would be this dotted line. This is just one flow scenario. It's a kind of an average annual flow, but similar pattern at different floods and various levels. So you can see that there'd be a fairly significant drop in the mill pond area and up to the Pollard Street Bridge, but above that point, it's a very small change, about 2 inches to 5 inches of water level drop, depending on the flow. And also, as I mentioned, there's a water supply intake upstream of the dam for the town. This is the town's water supply in the Concord River. And so as you can see, this is up in this area of very small change with dam removal. And the reason for that, again, is that this Fordway bar is a natural hard feature that would become almost like a new mini dam, a natural dam. Once this dam is removed, it would set water levels upstream of that point, and it would not erode away. So we've also looked at nearby infrastructure upstream and downstream of the dam. In this image, I'm showing a number of bridges that we looked at for potential scour or erosion if the dam were to be removed. We did not find any significant impacts, and we'll get DOT's concurrence on that, but those are our preliminary findings. Also a sewer main that crosses the river just downstream of the Route 3A bridge. And then lastly, the water supply intake that I mentioned is right here. So it's between the Pollard Street Bridge and the Boston Road Bridge. This is a look at a schematic look at the water supply intake. So here's where the water would enter in the wet well. And you can see we've mapped out the existing, a typical drought elevation and how high that is above the floor elevation. And then in a dam removal scenario, this is what it would look like. Existing is 6.1, proposed is 5.8. So it's about a 4-inch drop in the water level at the intake under drought conditions. So not a significant difference. The town DPW had this peer reviewed by their consultant, Woodard & Curran, and they concurred that they did not believe that it would impact pump operation. We are also looking, due to the town's concerns, at a nearby Superfund site, which is about a mile southeast of the dam, which is here. And this has actually, I think it's currently in the process of being closed. And peer reviewed it and concurred with our findings that it was unlikely to result in the migration of contamination of contaminants toward the dam or the river or impact the water supply in any way. But they recommended a few things for follow-up study, so we're working on that now. We're actually going to be out in the field on Wednesday surveying that canal and gathering some more information for that. And lastly, I believe we've looked extensively at cultural resources. We're aware that this is, a historic structure and is a great historic resource. So this has been going on for years. A historic and archaeological reconnaissance survey was conducted in 2015. Since then, much research and outreach has been conducted, and currently we're consulting with historic groups to plan potential mitigation for those resources. So this is just an excerpt of the conceptual design plans, and it shows the dam in gray here. There's also we believe a historic relic dam submerged upstream of the current spillway. So those are both shown here. This one's shown in white, and there's probably some rock fill between them. So all of that would be removed, but aside from that, there wouldn't be a lot of active work at the site. It would really just be removing the dam, grading back a little bit of the sediment, and kind of letting the rest naturally move around and restore. There's some other elements to the design as well, but that's the main part. This is just a little image of the side of the dam to show that this historic left abutment would be retained to support the bridge abutment, and we would kind of saw cut the granite blocks like that to support the remaining abutment. And this just shows some sectional views of the dam. The main thing here I just wanted to point out again was that there's the current granite block spillway here, and then just upstream we believe there's a submerged timber crib dam that would also be recorded as a historic resource and then removed. And this is an overview of the project timeline. So as I mentioned, we've done these previous studies, bringing us up to where we are now in preliminary design and permitting. We're anticipating submitting permit applications starting in May. And as permit comments are received, we will incorporate those into final design and targeting construction next summer or fall. And as far as outreach, we've been doing a lot of outreach, which Allison can speak more to, but we've developed these two great resources, a project website on the Merrimack River Watershed Council website, and also a project story map, which is kind of interpretive way of working through the background information in a really graphic way. No, it would not increase downstream flooding, and the easiest way to think about it is there are some big dams that are for flood storage, and they're very high, and they can fill up over a season with floodwaters and kind of prevent downstream flooding. And if they were removed, that would have an impact. But a small dam like this is what's called a run-of-river dam. So the flow coming into the dam is just going over the spillway and downstream. So even if that goes away, it's just coming into the the same spot in the river and going downstream. So nothing's really changing downstream. You could also think of it about a bathtub that has already filled up, and water's just spilling over the edge of the bathtub. So even if that edge is gone, the same amount of water's going out after that initial release, obviously. But yeah, no downstream flooding. It'd be about 4 inches lower upstream of Pollard Street Bridge. Yep. We definitely envision some sort of interpretive signage. It could be maybe pieces of the dam are saved and placed somewhere. There might be somewhere where you could potentially stand with an image and see where the dam used to be or something like that. There's lots of options. That's being worked out as part of preliminary and final design in outreach to the historical groups and there will be eventually what's called a memorandum of agreement. Eric could speak more to this if more details are wanted, but yes, that's definitely something that's going to be part of the design. It just isn't fleshed out yet. In dry conditions, you probably could, we'd want to think about any potential safety hazards and make sure that there weren't like high sections where somebody could fall off of a stone face or something like that. But yeah, the intent was mostly just to, support that existing structure. But we'll definitely want to incorporate some sort of, river access as part of this as well. Currently, people like to use the river for flatwater boating, and upstream of Pollard Street Bridge, that won't really change.
Yeah.
That will still be a great, recreational activity. Historically, before the dam was there, it's believed that between Pollard Street Bridge and the dam itself, there was a series of natural cascading waterfalls. So that's likely what would re-establish over time after the dam is removed. So that could present new opportunities for whitewater boating, which I know a number of paddlers are very interested in. There's already whitewater boating further downstream on the river. As far as the Fordway bar spanning the width of the river and what kind of data we have on the Fordway bar, so it's a little hard to tell at this scale, but this is a detailed bathymetry map that basically, boat went up and down every single, in a very detailed grid over that entire area. We specifically covered the Fordway bar many times over, and also with hand staff measurements, people out there waiting and measuring with RTK GPS. So we've covered that area pretty well. You can see that the high elevation zone spans the width of the river. It actually kind of goes on like a diagonal as far as the highest points. And that high point that's shown on your maps is actually the lowest section of the Fordway bar. So it's the spot that water would just like eke through if it was, totally drought conditions. So that's like the lowest part of the high bar.
Yeah, I'm Eric Hutchins with the NOAA Restoration Center out of Gloucester, and I've been actually working on this project. I think it goes back to since 2010, maybe 8. I go way back when we were just kind of chipping along. This project can't just take away someone's water supply. That's a given. We recognize that right out of the gate, and that's precisely why we came up with a draft scope of work, presented it to the town, their DPW, and your consultant. Actually, I can't even say I've done this many times in the past. We actually just left it in the hands of the town to critique it. They hired, actually it was Woodward and Karen in combination with Streamworks. So they had 2 consultants review the scope of work and modified it. And we actually incorporated everything the town wanted, received the review, the documentation back let them review that. So we take it extremely seriously. I really just want to really emphasize that. I don't think any agency is going to say someone's water is going to go away for the sake of fish. It's going to, if there was any issue, it's going to need to be mitigated. And the arbiter, in the end, most likely is going to be Mass DEP. The Water Supply Department will absolutely be looking at this as well. So we're all well aware of it. We're actually very pleased that the Fordway Bar has been there since the glaciation period. This is actually really unique. In many cases, we would not have this situation, and it would be identifiably as a significant impact. That Fordway Bar has such a written documentation in history of that's why everyone hated it in some ways. It was in the way of many things, and people wanted to blast it out for years. They couldn't even blast it out. So anyway, that's a long story, but we take the water supply issue very seriously. Just to touch on the other thing, the historic part that was touched on, NOAA will be the lead federal agency for the historic review, which we've started that process. We've reached out to the town's two historic bodies that will actually be reviewing this, tribes and the state and the public. So there's going to be plenty more opportunity to look for ideas. That's what part of it is looking for concurrence. That's why we do an actual formal MOA that'll be signed by everybody to say, we are going to do X, Y, Z, and I expect that that'll probably be in place for water supply issues as well. The outreach process is, for all practical purposes, is not formally underway yet. I've worked on over 50 dam removals, and I've probably 3/4 of them, we've done some form or the other of historic mitigation. I've worked on 5 dam removals in Town Brook and Plymouth. That was where the Pilgrims landed. So we've got a lot of experience at bringing the public in and promoting the historical. But it would be in concurrence with Mass Historic. So there will be, and we will be in front of the two, I can't remember what they're called. You have two historic, you have a historic district and the historic commission. We will be in front of both of them, presenting and looking for ideas. What the level of actual funding, there's not a number on that. It'll be commensurate with the impact.
Yep, so the links at the end have all the documents, including the peer-reviewed documents. I just wanted to note too, on the project website, which is linked there, all the documents that you mentioned are there, and also all the public meetings that we've held. So the earliest, I think, was 2014 or 15 and 16. So we had 2 during that feasibility study. So those are up there, and then the later ones were recorded as well. It's not that the dam is falling apart. Obviously, it's built of granite blocks. It seems to be in pretty good shape. It's just that it's inadequate to pass flood flows per current Massachusetts dam safety regulations. So there's certain floods that have to be passed, and you need to have adequate spillway width in order to pass that, and this dam doesn't meet that at all. So, and there's not really any space to extend the length of the spillway or anything like that, so the dam would probably have to be rebuilt, or some sort of auxiliary spillway would have to be added to meet the dam safety regulations. So that's the repair number that would be much more expensive to address, which isn't quantified except to say that it would be much more expensive than dam removal. There's an opening where a former fish way in the 1800s may have, once existed, but there's no data as to how effective it was, if it actually passed fish or not. Sure, yeah, so it's river herring, which are 2 species, alewives and blueback herring. They're very similar, so they're referred to as river herring. American shad, American eels, and sea lamprey. So those are the migratory fish species that would benefit directly from the project, and then also resident fish species and other aquatic species.
Any day now. We're monitoring all the rivers up and down the East Coast right now. At this exact site, we know there's eels upstream. Some do make it over. So we actually have eels right up to this dam. And there's literally, I don't know what the latest counts are for the Merrimack River, but we've had years in the past decade of well over a couple 100,000 river herring in the Merrimack. One of the nice benefits to the Concord River is it's actually below one of the main stem dams on the Merrimack River, so it actually has certainly high potential. The number of miles that would be opened up for migratory fish between the main stem and tributaries would be about 135 miles. No dam has opened up that mileage of main stem and tributaries yet in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So it's quite significant, the amount of habitat that it opens up.
I think there's good reason to support the mission of our team here.
Just to add to that, since you ask about the fiscal part, a very high percentage of dams that we've worked on removing over the years throughout New England and across the country, a very high percentage of these old mill dams have actually been municipally owned, because over the past 50 years, in that time frame, as use of water power disappeared, municipalities in many, many cases throughout New England loved their dams so much they took it for $1. And they are hating themselves up and down the East Coast right now because they took on a huge amount of liability with potential contamination, liability, failures, and these dam safety inspections that are only getting worse by the year. In some cases, they didn't pass it off yet. So Bob, in this case, Mr. Martin, is left with it. But you'd be amazed at how many municipalities took over dams thinking they wanted it, needed it for whatever reason, and they are actually all over the place saying, help us out, remove it, because we do not want this anymore. Why is the National Marine Fisheries Service here? And, I get that question a lot. I don't do much marine work anymore, even though I used to, fishing boats and offshore. River herring and shad, and in particular, are really a lot of the basis of the food chain in the marine environment. They're only coming here to spawn, but it's the only place they will spawn. These schools of river herring are what feed tuna, codfish, bluefish, striped bass, which is supporting, and these fish are highly migratory. The fish out of the Concord River can migrate anywhere from the Canadian Maritimes down to the Chesapeake and potentially a little bit below that, and out to 200 miles. They're feeding whales, seabirds, so it's the whole ecosystem, not so much exactly that people are going to make a paycheck fishing for river herring up here in the Concord River, but it's supporting the whole East Coast industry at the basis, and their populations are in horrible shape, East Coast wide, because so many of the rivers are all clogged up with dams and not working fish ladders. Thank you.
Thank you.